Hello and welcome to episode 808 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I am one of the co-founders here at ETR, and we are coming off of a hard to get the stack right kind of week. Yes, that's right. With the 49ers back on the main slate and with the 49ers at a full arsenal of weapons, minus Brandon Ayuk, of course, and facing the Tampa Bay Bucks pass funnel, we were faced with a difficult task. Yes, Brock Purdy was somewhat clearly the best quarterback play on the slate and would not be outrageously owned. Sims loved Brock Purdy. Optos loved him. Ham building bros loved him. So I spent a decent bit of Sunday morning trying to figure out if Brock Purdy hits, how does that look? Is it single stack? Is it a double stack? Is it a triple? Should it be with CMC? Should it be with pure pass catchers only? Should it have Bucks guys in it? And just stepping back for a minute, we've been talking for 10 years, and I haven't really changed my mind about how there's definitely value in knowing that when X quarterback hits, Y and Z guys are going to go off, or they're really likely to be in the winning lineup. Joe Burrow doubles is an example. I played Aaron Rodgers doubles on Sunday. I thought if Aaron Rodgers hits, it's like very clearly how that's going to look. And I thought there was a lot of value in that. But clearly, I overestimated Aaron Rodgers' chances of actually hitting his ceiling. It's similar to the ceiling conversation that we had during best ball season. Just making up examples. Yes, Xavier Worthy's ceiling is absolutely massive, but maybe he only hits it 5% of the time. Is that better than, say, Terry McLaurin, whose ceiling is lower, but he hits it at, say, 5 times as often as Xavier Worthy does? So, anyways, back to Brock Purdy. I ended up playing 3 Brock Purdy GPP teams out of the 9 that I played. Purdy, Debo, Juwan Jennings, and then 2 versions of Purdy, CMC, Debo. I thought it was too tightly priced on both sites to really play George Kittle with everyone back. And, was right there in a sense, as Kittle tied his season low with 4 targets, set a season low with an 11% target share. But he did get 3 catches, 57 yards, and 1 touchdown on that. So he was part of some winning teams on a low-scoring week. Also, Ricky Pearsall was 3rd in routes, but he did see 17% of the targets. Perhaps should have mixed him in, considering how hard we were scraping for cheap wide receiver targets. My point in all this, though, is a reminder to myself to not get paralyzed by the unclean stack stuff. Like in the past, maybe I didn't know who to play between Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So I would just play neither and skip that spot altogether. I do not want to do that because a lot of people do that. Purdy was only 16% owned in DK large field. Christian McCaffrey was 12%. Debo Samuel 7. Ricky Pearsall 7. George Kittle 19. Those stayed low. Outside of Kittle, those stayed relatively low because I think in part people like me were unclear on who to stack with. The key, though, for me is just ensuring that if we are taking on these tough spots, they're truly slate-breaking spots. I'm embarrassed to admit that I played a Caleb Williams tournament team this week. I wasn't really sure who to stack with, but played through it anyways. And maybe that's bad because Caleb doesn't hit that often. And then on top of that, I could still get the stack wrong and not get paid off. So, yeah, overall, I thought it was a great tournament week in week 10. It was so clear that it would be a very low-scoring slate. Cash plays were far weaker than the previous week. Cap was tighter. It was just a great environment for tournaments, for correlation, for maybe like getting one thing right, and it's all you need. So with that in mind, the one regret that I had, I was pissed at myself for not doing a Niners onslaught. I was actually in a 148 entry field on DraftKings, played the Purdy, CMC, Debo in there. Would have been the perfect spot to add on Juwan Jennings too, I think. But yeah, I mean, because with only 148 people in the field, we can live with a couple mad games and one really good one and can still win the tournament. As for the cash slate, I thought the most interesting spot was the Saquon Barkley versus Alvin Kamara call on DraftKings. We had Alvin Kamara decently ahead of Saquon in projection, even with Saquon fudged up a bit. I still thought that it was a coin flip, so I did the cowardly thing and played Kamara on FanDuel where he was way cheaper than Barkley, and I played Barkley on DraftKings where they were only $200 apart. Now, the way that Barkley's game went, you can see why it's so tough on projection for Saquon. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert, they combined for 13 of Jalen Hurts' 20 targets, and Saquon gets one. Saquon gets tackled on the 1 yard line for the 10th time this season. Jalen Hurts steals the goal line touchdown. Later, Jalen Hurts runs one in from 8 yards out. And so when these things happen, you're left holding your cock with Saquon Barkley, even though he played a fine game and the Eagles rolled. Of course that never happens with Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara can have a bad game, but he's never getting one target in a game quarterbacked by Derek Carr with their wide receiver situation. And Derek Carr is rarely running for touchdowns. But even in hindsight, I still think it's close to a coin flip because there's so much more systemic risk with the Saints. We know the Eagles are going to score a lot of points. We know the Eagles are going to have the ball plenty against Cooper Rush. The Saints, given their situation, could show up and score 3 points in the game against the Falcons, And yes, the Eagles do have a magnet to the 1 yard line. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Saquon leads the NFL in getting tackled at the 1 or 2, as Rich Rebar noted. It's just really hard to project how often a team is going to get tackled at the 1. Saquon easily could have had 2 or 3 touchdowns, and then we're not sitting here having this debate. To be fair, at the same time, Alvin Kamara dropped like the easiest long touchdown I've ever seen. So, anyways, as I said, I was a coward and split it across sites. Maybe that's bad. I don't know. The Saquon stuff has my head in a pretzel for sure. I will say that, though I think playing multiple cash lineups on the same site isn't great, it's so hard to win with both doing that. Hedging across sites due to different pricing and setup, I definitely think that you can win on both. All right. Need to get to listener questions, but before I do, couple things. Remember, NBA is now in full swing. If you want to play NBA DFS, you need our in-season product. If you want to get our NBA props plays and or see our full stat projections for NBA, you need the weekly NBA ETR player prop sub. For details on all this, head to the NBA tab on establishthерun.com. Can also listen to the show that I did with Dink just before the NBA season started. Also, if you want to use an optimizer for any sport, but obviously for NFL or NBA, you need to add on the solver through the subscribe tab at ETR. We have Sims for NFL through the solver, tons more if you click those solver links in the subscribe tab on ETR. And lastly, I've been told there is a big MMA fight this week. Brett Apley and our MMA team are on it. Be sure to check out that tab on the site as well if you're interested in the MMA stuff this coming weekend. All right, enough is enough. It is time for everyone's favorite portion of the program, the listener questions. Question 1 comes from one of the best friends of the show. You know him from the solver and the WNBA streets. It is from Glenn. He says, did you go to any fun Halloween parties? Oh, man. This is really an all-time humiliating story. Glenn is trying to humiliate me. He wants to humiliate me, and that's fine. I deserve it. So it's Saturday night of Halloween weekend. Go to this party at these people's house. No kids are invited, adults only. I, of course, dressed up like a dog. Anyways, I honestly don't know why, but that night at this party, I decided to actually drink. I won't bore you with the details, but I remember taking a shot and then going upstairs in these people's house to puke. No big deal. I just planned to go upstairs, puke, go back down to the party like nothing happened. Apparently, I ended up passing out on the floor in the upstairs bathroom at these people's house. So I guess after some time went by, my wife realized that I wasn't around at the party. She starts looking for me, couldn't find me anywhere downstairs. She walked back to our house, couldn't find me there, starts freaking out, asking everyone at the party if they'd seen me. No one had. They were like, how the fuck do you lose a 42-year-old quote unquote man? I use that term loosely. How the fuck do you lose a 42-year-old man? Which, is a fair question. Anyways, I really barely remember going into the bathroom, but I do remember the door opening at some point and someone saying, "Oh, I found him. He's in here." I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine opening a bathroom door upstairs at a party and you find a dude in a Bernese Mountain Dog onesie on the floor in the fetal position? I mean, I'm literally never drinking again. I'm also never leaving my house again. It's just too humiliating. Easily top 1 most humiliating episode of my entire life. Just so bad. Question 2 from Luke, not producer Luke, a different Luke, says, what's the best way to get you to select a question to read on the solo pod? What topics do you feel you pick the most from, if you pick at all? Here's a picture of my dog with Encanto for fun. Hashtag release the historical transcripts. Well, first of all, Luke, yes, I read through and pick all the listener questions for the solo pod myself. I mean, I don't know what kind of operation you think that we're running here. I'm not the fucking CEO of Google. No one gets my coffee and picks my listener questions for me and writes my tweets, you know. As for which questions to answer, it's difficult for me to kind of pinpoint or explain here. It's kind of a know it when you see it kind of thing. I think it's really two different things. First, questions that can help the most people. I really do enjoy helping people. I feel bad because dozens of people ask me every week start sit questions or trade questions or 2v2s for DFS, and I want to help. There's just not enough time, you know? So I try to answer questions on here that are strategic, general, things that apply to almost everyone listening. And maybe, you know, hopefully they can take something away from it to use themselves wisely, which I think is better than trying to give someone the answer. Um, and second, when I'm looking at these questions, like I need to have something to say. If someone asks a question about anything really, you know, DFS, football, life, I don't know. eh, If I don't know, have a good answer, or don't have anything unique or interesting or funny to say, it's not that it was a bad question. It just may not have an answer that I can come up with that I think will be good or entertaining. So yeah, or useful. So as for historical transcripts, I have great news, Luke. The seminal novel of our generation, Skin to Fur, is effectively transcripts from, I don't know, the first 3 to 5 years or so of solo pods. Um, it's a best-selling book. I've made literally dozens of dollars selling this ebook. So you're welcome. Question 3 from Zach. He says, if you were hypothetically able to see the outcomes of all Sunday NFL games and box scores one time, 24 hours in advance, and somehow had 100% certainty it was correct, what would you do? How would you get as much action down as you could? How would you fund the action? Would you tell people? Okay, that's an interesting thought exercise. I think one thing that's a huge part of the betting ecosystem now that would make this really easy is all of the single game parlays and regular parlays. Like that's all these books want people to bet because they're holding an absurd amount on them, you know, 20% or more on these parlays and single game parlays. This leverage that's created in the betting ecosystem now through parlays and SGPs, it makes it so easy to get these really exponential returns if you know the outcome of games. That's why I think we shouldn't have single game parlays that include the ninth guy on the Raptors like Jonte Porter, or I don't think we should have single game parlays with tennis matches featuring guys ranked 200th in the world. It's just asking for trouble like we saw with Jonte Porter. So anyway, back to the question. I wouldn't be too greedy, man. I'd set a goal to win $10 million and then retire the next day. Um, that sounds like a crazy number, but given all the single game parlays I can put in at 20 to 1, 50 to 1, 100 to 1, all the 12 leg parlays that I'd hit just on sides or whatever, I wouldn't even need that much capital. You know, I'd probably take 500,000, bet some parlays to win 10 million. If I'm limited too hard and I can't get down, I'd get on a plane to Vegas, be there in 2 hours and finish up. You know, it would be incredibly easy. I think a more interesting question would be, let's say someone told you that I can tell you the results and box scores of every NFL game for the week with the caveat that 90% of those results that I'm giving you would be correct, perfectly correct, but 10% of those would be wrong. You know, how would you play that? That's a much tougher problem where you would need a way bigger portfolio, way more money to smooth out picking, you know, the 10% in a certain amount. Like you're going to pick the wrong 10% of outcomes in a certain amount of your parlays and SGPs. But I suspect that it's still a total printing press once you figure it out. I'd certainly be contracting our data side team to help with that one. But yeah, if you want to, if you have the answers, if you know exactly what's going to happen on Sunday, Luke, if that or Zach, if that's what you're trying to tell me here, I'm open to it. Please tell me. Question 4 from Matt. He says, with your health kick, are you taking any supplements? Yeah, I loved all the health questions. Standard disclaimer: I'm not a doctor. I know nothing about this stuff. I'm just a dude who's obsessed about it and trying to figure it out. So I am a total noob on a lot of this stuff, but on supplements specifically, I'm beyond a noob, like 1,000% the wrong person to ask. For most of my life, my take has been that our bodies are amazing and have everything we need. And all supplements have side effects, even if we can't pinpoint exactly what they are. That was my take. So I've really tried to avoid putting stuff in my body. But as I've learned more and gotten old and need this stuff more, I realized that maybe that was a bad take. But still, I'm pretty hesitant. All that I take right now is a creatine gummy in the morning, just a few grams of creatine, and then vitamin D supplement at night. It's definitely possible I'd benefit from more stuff, but I'm just such a skeptical, cynical person. It's a horrible way to live, but in my head, I just assume that these supplement companies are trying to make money, and we don't know the full effects and the side effects of this stuff. So I don't know. I'm open to it. If anyone wants to show me supplements I should consider, I'm certainly open to looking at them. Question 5, last question we're going to do today comes from Javier. He says, why is it so difficult to find a way to allow online peer-to-peer games like poker and DFS to be played without geolocation restrictions? I think Javier knows the answer to this. He's just trying to get me riled up. The bottom line is that all this stuff is gray or grayish because it's a state's issue. It's not a federal issue. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm no lawyer, but going state by state, bribing politicians. I'm sorry, I mean, campaign contributing to every state level politician and anyone who has political power in the state. I mean, think about how expensive that is, how hard that is. You're battling all these people that don't want poker or DFS because of their own self interest. Meanwhile, the politicians don't care. They just want to be, they just want their campaign contributions. It's horrible. So I give so much credit to the teams at DraftKings and FanDuel who got their shit together in 2015, hired a bunch of bribers. I'm sorry, I mean lobbyists, and pushed DFS through in so many states. The poker world just hasn't had anyone to organize, to raise enough money to do that at the same level, from what I can tell. And like, I get it, believe me. I mean, you could tell me, hey, Adam, I'll put you in charge of Poker Stars United States. You'll make millions and millions of dollars, but it's your job to get it legal in all these states first. I'd be like, fuck no, that sounds like the worst job in the history of the world. So yeah, it's is what it is. DFS is in a great spot right now, thanks to the hard work and money of some very key people. I'd love for poker to get there one day. I miss playing poker online for sure. I just have no idea if or when that's going to happen. All right. That is going to do it for this week's solo pod. We'll be back later today after. I was going to say after the trade deadline, but the trade deadline has passed. We'll be back later today with Daigle for waiver wire, and later tonight with Silva for team by team analysis of week 10. For in-season subscribers, first run of week 11 projections will be out Wednesday night. And myself, Sylvan Wiggins, will be on the show Friday night talking every player in every week 11 game. For Bruce Luke, for Jerry, my one true love, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.